Welcome back. Power Rankings time. Of course, it's always titled for the night that I record it, which is October 25th. It does go live on October 26th. It's not a big deal. I've thought about changing it to October 26th, but then people would expect it to include the Sunday games. It'd be confusing. And I don't include the standings because the standings should not dictate power rankings, especially this early in the season where there's so many teams that are right close to one another. And so just power rankings can be very unpredictable from one week to the next. And this week there are some big movers. I am wearing Utah. But let's go ahead. We'll jump in with number 32 this week, and that is Calgary. The Calgary Flames at the bottom of the standings, just to mention the standings, and also at the bottom of the board. Calgary's issues, basically, it's scoring. It's everything they had last year, but amped up. And Wolf having a bit of a slow start. He's getting better, but at this point, I think the damage is done. They're sitting at 1-7-1. So, yeah, Calgary comes in 32nd. I don't know if they've been last on the power rankings for a very long time. Doesn't feel like they have been. Number 31, moving up one spot from last week, is San Jose. So they get the win this week over the Rangers. I still think they're playing better than their record, but their record does keep them down in 31st. The San Jose Sharks still have some work to do on their rebuild, of course, but the future is very bright, and we're seeing a lot of that future on display for the San Jose Sharks at this stage. Number 30, same spot as last week, Tampa. They got a win today. The win over Anaheim was impressive. However, they need to string that along. They need more wins than that. They basically need a 3 or 4 game winning streak to really and truly show that they're back. So today's a good start. We'll see what happens from here. They are 30th on this week's power rankings. Back-to-back weeks at 30. I didn't see that coming. And they were 27th the first week of the power rankings. So, yeah, Tampa's had a really slow start to the year. Number 29, dropping 10 spots from last week, is Boston. Yes, Boston won the game today. They beat Colorado. They also lost 6 games in a row before that. So I didn't move Boston up after that win. It's just they are 4-6. I don't see them as a playoff team. Sure, Swayman kind of stole that one today. We'll see what they do from here, but yeah, they end up 29th this week. So they're not the only team I root for that took a bit of a drop this week on the power rankings. Number 28, moving up one spot from last week, is LA. So the LA Kings move up one spot from last week. They didn't have an awful week. They do lose in the shootout tonight against Nashville. And so for LA, they're plugging along. The good news being they got Kopitar back. They've got Kemper back in net. So you have to think the wins are going to start showing up. They've got Perry in their lineup now too. They are getting healthier. Now it's just a matter of that translating to victories. And for the LA Kings, they're sitting currently 1 point back of a playoff spot, but they are tied for that last playoff spot. In terms of third place in the Pacific, they are tied with Anaheim. So it may be easier to get third in the Pacific this year than to get a wild card spot in the West. Number 27, and dropping 10 spots as well, the Rangers. Like I said, these teams are all closely packed together. And for the Rangers, it feels like that loss against San Jose, a bit of a gut punch. And we'll see if they're able to get themselves together. Their struggles at home are definitely noteworthy. And yeah, the Rangers, there's still a lot of work still to be done here by the Rangers. And it just doesn't look fantastic. But again, for the Rangers, they're how far out there? They've got 8 points. They're behind a bunch of teams in the East. They've got a lot of teams to jump past, but they're only 1 point back of a playoff spot. So it depends on whether you're a glass half empty, glass half full type. Number 26, dropping 11 spots from last week, is Vancouver. If they'd beaten Montreal tonight, obviously they wouldn't have dropped that much. But the losses at the end of the road trip, and now they come out tonight against Montreal. They had a 2-0 lead. They lost that lead. They lose the game in regulation. Just a tough trend right now for Vancouver. I did the video yesterday on the Canucks where I talked about how I don't think this is a team that is a playoff team. I don't get upset when they lose. Was not upset when Montreal held on and beat them tonight. I don't see a playoff team there. I want them to prove me wrong, but they're currently 4-5 and sitting 1 point back of Anaheim, and Anaheim has a game in hand on them as well. Number 25, and dropping 5 spots from last week. This is going to be a little bit controversial because they're technically in a playoff spot in the West. They've won 4 out of 9 games. And Nashville, if they keep plugging along and getting points and staying above the playoff line, they will end up back in this third row. Absolutely. But yeah, Nashville at 25. They do take a bit of a drop this week, but it's early in the season. It's easy for them to get that back with a strong week. So we'll see how things go for the Nashville Predators. They are in the second wildcard spot, so my rankings don't change that. But for me personally, watching all these games, I'm not as impressed with Nashville. There's been some good fortune. This definitely helped them out. And I will throw in there too, shootout victories I treat as ties. So when I'm doing this, when I'm updating the power rankings daily, I do treat shootout victories the same as I would treat a tie. So we move into the next row, number 24, and moving up 2 spots. And moving back to where they started is Columbus. Columbus, they do get the 2 points tonight in Pittsburgh. It wasn't a pretty game for the players or for the coaches. Coaches prefer the low-scoring games. There's got to be a lot of coaches right now that are kind of frustrated with how the defense is gone. But for Columbus, they do end up getting the 2 points tonight against Pittsburgh. And, they're in one of those I want to see what they're able to do situations. There are so many teams right at or near 500. They can easily be in a playoff spot at this time next week. They could easily also be last in the East next week at this time. That's how close it is. Last place in the East is 6 points, and a playoff spot is 9 points. So it's it really is up in the air. Number 23, dropping 2 spots from last week, is Minnesota. I didn't expect Minnesota to be down this far in the power rankings. I can't remember the last time Minnesota was 23rd. It has been a while. I don't go through my power rankings and monitor all that. I really don't. I know there's people that do, but I don't. Number 23 being Minnesota surprises me. Certainly, there are a lot of teams that have got on the board to this point that if you told me before the season this is how it was going to look, I'd be like, wow, this is quite the season that, really? Is that, you guys are messing with me, right? Anyways, number 22, the fan base that thinks I've forgotten them, moving up 6 spots from last week, is Buffalo. I did not forget the Buffalo puck. The Buffalo Sabres are out of the bottom row. Let us all celebrate. Let us all celebrate Buffalo, who started the season 32nd, now being 22nd 2 weeks later. So that means 2 weeks from now, they'll be 12th. Maybe not. But the fact that Buffalo is currently sporting a record of 4-4-1, considering the 0-3 start to the season, that means they've been 4-1-1 since then, and they looked good against Toronto, or Toronto looked mediocre against Buffalo. And that's the trick too, is to say, so is this team actually good, or is this team not as good as people expected? And that would be Toronto, right? So Buffalo's 22 this week, and we'll see how things progress from there. Number 21, moving up 1 spot from last week, is Ottawa. The win over Washington prevented any kind of fall. And that was an impressive victory in Washington. I do look at that, and I said this in the review tonight, I do look at that as just, it's an off game for Washington. That's not who they are. If you replay that game tomorrow, there's no way it's a 7-1 win for Ottawa. Ottawa just came in with a game plan, and they hammered it home for 60 minutes. If Ottawa keeps playing that way, they could be in the top 2 rows next week. Number 20, moving up 7 spots from last week, the Islanders. So a 7-spot jump, and it's still not the biggest jump. Remember, I wear the jersey of the team that took the biggest jump of the week. It's not the Islanders, but moving up 7 spots is impressive. The Islanders started the season in 29th, moved up to 27th, and now they're in 20th. So they are moving up the board. I will not be surprised if they continue to. They're playing very smart hockey. It's not always the prettiest, but it doesn't have to be. You just have to go out there and win the games when they're presented to you. And they are 4-3-1, keeping in mind that they started the season 0-3 as well. So yeah, the Islanders have bounced back nicely after a really rough start. Number 19, dropping 5 spots from last week, is Toronto. So I did mention with Buffalo, are Buffalo good? Maybe Toronto's not as good as we expected. And so Toronto is 19th. They are sitting outside the playoffs, 4-4-1. I've got the standings board right in front of me. So yeah, Toronto, this is not the kind of season that I think fans had hoped for. The good news being Wall is back. But Nylander being out definitely is a negative. And the one thing I do wonder with Toronto is there enough skill here to get them into the playoffs? I think the East is going to be really difficult. That won't surprise anybody. Is there enough skill on the Toronto Maple Leafs to keep them above the playoff line? Keeping in mind that from one year to the next, you don't carry over your standing points. You don't carry over being a division winner from one year into the next. Just ask the Canucks from last year. Doesn't make a difference. You can still have a disastrous season the following year. Number 18, moving up 5 spots from last week. Nicely done, Ducks. The Anaheim Ducks are cruising towards potentially being in the top 2 rows. It is nice to see this. I do like to see the movement on this board from one year to the next. I did kind of feel last season like there wasn't that much in terms of upheaval of who was in or outside the playoffs. And I do think that's part of the reason why you'll see like ratings drop off a bit. If it's the same story, you may not want to watch it again. So yeah, Anaheim moving up. Really, really strong performances. I even thought tonight in Tampa, I didn't think they played a bad game. I thought Tampa just wanted it a little bit more because Tampa Bay had to win that game. Number 17, the last team out of the top 2 rows, moving up 7 spots from last week. Chicago Blackhawks. I will say the same thing that I said towards the end of last season. They were having fun. They're still having fun. The Chicago Blackhawks are playing pretty well. And right now they're the number 1 wild card in the West. They could do this. And I think if Chicago does make the playoffs, I think that's going to be a tough team to knock out. You got Spencer Knight playing fantastic. You've got all kinds of really good, hungry young talent, both up front and on the blue line. And they have a lot of cap space, so they could add at the deadline. Yeah, I think teams in the West should be a little bit scared of what Chicago's got put together here at this point in time. But they're 17th on the power rankings board. Remember, they were 30th in the first week of the power rankings. So we move into the top 2 rows and moving up 9 spots. Philadelphia. The Flyers are in the top half of the board. I've been very impressed with their work ethic. I do think that Rick Tocchet's played a role in this. I did hear in the broadcast today that he compares Owen Tippett to Mikko Rantanen. If he can get Owen Tippett to produce like at a Rantanen level, guy's a genius. But either way, clearly the Philadelphia Flyers responding well to the coaching change. And this is how Rick Tocchet ends up winning Coach of the Year if Philadelphia stays in. Although if Chicago's in the playoffs, Jeff Blashill's Coach of the Year, absolutely. Exposing that Coach of the Year is basically just which team surprisingly made the playoffs. So the Philadelphia Flyers in the top 16, I don't know that that's happened since 2020. Maybe, but I remember at the pause in 2020, they were number 1 on my power rankings, and it's taken them 5 years to get over it. Number 15, dropping 3 spots from last week, is St. Louis. St. Louis Blues. I do not have this puck design with the new old logo that they're using. So a drop of 3 spots for St. Louis. That 4-goal lead should have held. If you're up 4-0 against a Detroit team that is looking like they're sliding, you shouldn't lose that game. And they did. They allowed 6 straight goals to lose that game 6-4. So St. Louis takes a bit of a drop this week. Not a lot, especially considering they are 3-4-1. And this is where I mentioned the standings don't necessarily make a big difference to me. I look at how teams are playing. So if they'd held that 4-0 lead, they'd have a 4-3-1 record instead of 3-4-1. So yeah, St. Louis drops a few spots, but not a lot of spots. Number 14, dropping 5 spots from last week, Edmonton. I still think Edmonton's playing well, but the numbers, like in terms of their record and goals and everything, it's underwhelming at this point. And so the Oilers have dropped. Week 1, they were 7th, so they've dropped 7 spots over 2 weeks. And the loss in Seattle definitely didn't help. It probably helped Seattle a little bit, didn't it? Because now they're tied for first in the division. But for the Oilers, they now find themselves on the outside looking in at the playoffs. And I thought this during the game, too. I thought, can you imagine if the Oilers and the Maple Leafs both miss the playoffs in 2026? Like, that's bonkers. That's insane. So I can't imagine that. They have to get it together, or do they? Because we do have surprises at times. Number 13, moving up 5 spots from last week, is Florida. That win over Vegas, gets them to 5-5. So their overall record isn't great. But that win over Vegas tonight, that was Florida hockey. That was the Florida Panthers going out there and understanding that they needed that game. It's early in the season, but you don't want to be 4-6. And they played like it. And the depth players came up clutch. They defended well. Bobrovsky made the saves when he needed to. It looked like a Florida game. If you watch that game not knowing their record, you would have come out of that game saying, so they're back. They look really good, so they could win 3 in a row, kind of thing. Especially because they're without Tkachuk and they're without Barkov, so these results are impressive. If they can build on that win, if they can build on it. Florida's had a couple of other impressive wins earlier in the year. They just haven't been able to follow it up with others. Number 12, dropping 4 spots from last week, Dallas. Dallas, they got the win tonight over Carolina. Great. They got down 2-0 against Carolina. Less great. But they had lost 3 in a row coming into tonight. So this is where I remind people the power rankings measure the whole week, not just the one night. And coming into tonight, Dallas was lower than 12th. Dallas had not looked very good. So maybe this game against Carolina can turn them around, the same as I think the win for Florida could turn their year around. We shall see. Moving on to number 11, Seattle. Seattle just outside the top 10. So Seattle through the first 3 weeks of the season, they have been, top half of the board all 3 weeks. So 16th, 11th, 11th. Hardworking team. Goals at key moments when they need them. And saves from Decord when they need those saves from Joey Decord. So Joey Decord has really followed up on what was a great season last year with another good season so far this year. I just had to pause for a little bit of a drink. You can hear my throat, right? That is kind of getting a little bit dry. But yeah, Seattle at number 11. They're the last team outside the top 10. Let's jump into the top 10, shall we? Dropping 4 spots from last week is Detroit. And I think Detroit fans will take that. The comeback tonight was definitely helpful for keeping them in the top 2 rows. Detroit, they're still 6-3. So, yes, they lost a couple of games. They got humiliated by the Islanders. But the 4-goal comeback against St. Louis, that's impressive. And Finney continues to produce. And, yeah, they bailed out their goaltending after what was not necessarily a great start. So, yeah, the Detroit Red Wings stay in the top 10 this week. The last team not in the top row, number 9 on the board this week, Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh moves up 4 spots from last week. So the Pittsburgh Penguins, they find themselves very close to the top row in a year where a lot of us, myself included, expected a rebuilding team. The Pittsburgh Penguins are defying gravity. They only got the 1 point tonight against Columbus, but they came back when they needed to, and they overcame some adversity in that game. I think Pittsburgh, honestly, it's second place now in their division. Maybe they're going to be a playoff team this year. Maybe that's going to happen. So that's everybody outside the top 8. Let's go ahead. We'll get into the top row, dropping 6 spots from last week, Colorado. I think with Colorado, I think there's just kind of this, I don't know if it's a malaise or if it's just it's an 82-game schedule and you're going to have a bit of a dip there. So this might be the Avalanche's sort of, they do that drop on the board and then they go right back up. We've had this in previous seasons as well. So Colorado, who've only lost 1 in regulation, but they've won 5 out of 9. So you can look at it and say they've only lost 1 in regulation, but they've lost 4 out of 9. So either way, they do find themselves in 8th this week. I do expect them to be kind of angry after that loss against Boston. I think that's just going to make them really mad. Number 7. Dropping 2 spots from last week, and another team that seemed mad tonight was Washington. That loss against Ottawa, just humiliating. And so the Washington Capitals still find themselves in the top row, but just barely. So they're 7th this week. If next week goes the way that this week did, I could see Pittsburgh in the top row. If Colorado and Washington drop out, I wouldn't be surprised to see Seattle in the top row next week if they keep playing the way they've been playing too. So, the Capitals are 7th this week, but they've been in the top row almost every week. They were 10th the first week. All right, number 6, moving up 4 spots from last week, Montreal. I can't remember the last time Montreal was in the top row either. The Montreal Canadiens are a good team. They're good, they're fast, they're talented. And the one thing I thought of tonight while they were playing against Vancouver, it's impossible for me not to think this, is that Montreal's done this masterful rebuild really quickly, and Vancouver's never committed to a rebuild. Vancouver has some very good talent, but they never committed to that rebuild. And all I could think watching Montreal skate in circles around them at times was, I wonder what the Canucks would be like if back in 2017 they'd actually said we need to do a full rebuild. Where would the Canucks be now? But Trevor Linden needed to go anyway. So, Montreal's number 6 this week, and Kent Hughes isn't going anywhere. He is one of the best general managers in the game. Number 5, dropping one spot from last week, is Vegas. I did not punish them a lot for that loss today against the Florida Panthers. Vegas, though, not looking like the best team in the league right now. Losing Mark Stone definitely is part of it. Mark Stone was off to a great start to the season. He was leading the league in assists through the first week and a half approximately. So losing that influence in your lineup is definitely going to cause some problems. Moving on to number 4, moving up 12 spots. 12. Yeah, the Utah Mammoth. 12 spots for the Utah Mammoth, and they are in the top 4. I have Utah ahead of Vegas right now. And in the standings, they're number 1 in the West, and they are tied for first overall. So the Utah Mammoth, playoff team? Yes. Yes, at the very least. Unlikely division winners? Bring it on. I think that would be absolutely amazing if Utah were to win their division. It's very early. We're a little... It's not even 10% of the way through. No, it is. We got to be 10% of the way through. Most teams have played 8 or 9 games. I was going to get the number tonight, too, of how many games we've had played, and every time I try to load it up on the app, I get bad requests, too many requests, and... Because I like to see what the game number is when they do the official game number. You guys just want me to move on? Okay. Number 3, same spot as last week as Winnipeg. Winnipeg Jets, consistently in the top row. Again this year. I'm mildly surprised by this because Lowry's out. They've lost Ehlers. So the fact that they're still top 3 says a lot about how this team's put together, how they're coached, and the work ethic that they put in. So the fact that they gave Comrie goals that they didn't give Hellebuck in the game against Seattle, I find that interesting. But the Winnipeg Jets, 3rd on the power rankings this week. Not too far out of 1st. 2nd on the power rankings this week, dropping 1 spot from last week, is Carolina. Losses against the Vegas Golden Knights and the Dallas Stars, which is sandwiched between them beating the Quebec Nordiques as the Hartford Whalers. I'm not going to move them down a lot because they're losing against top teams. But they're not number 1 this week. The Carolina Hurricanes being in 2nd spot, which is a pretty good spot to be anyways. So, yeah, that's 2nd. So who's 1st? Who's left off the board? Who moved up 6 spots from last week? The New Jersey Devils. New Jersey's number 1 on the power rankings. So 2 weeks ago it was Florida. Last week it was Carolina. And this week it's New Jersey. The New Jersey Devils are becoming a team that's talked about as an actual Stanley Cup contender with the run that they've been on, winning 7 in a row after losing their first game to start the season. 1 win away from the record set by the New York Islanders in 82-83. That was the year that the Islanders won their 4th and final Stanley Cup in a row. So that's pretty good company to be in if you're the New Jersey Devils. And they are number 1 right now in the standings as well. So for anybody who wants to talk about the standings, number 1 is New Jersey anyways. So there you go. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. Hit like and subscribe in the event you may not have done so already. Thank you guys so much for all your support. It's greatly appreciated. I will talk to you again soon.